Are you good to start?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because we've already started anyway. So.
That's good. Right.
You know what? It's kind of after watching 5 hours of DVD footage, it's kind of strange to see you, all clean shaven, no mop of hair and whatnot.
Well, I've got to tell you, the funny thing about it is, of course, it spans 11 years, the DVD, and it starts off like 68, 69, and goes through to 79. But there's the main section of it starts off with the Royal Albert Hall in 1970. And my kids saw it, and we had a showing in London. We're going to have one here any day too, aren't we? But the thing is that they were saying, when's Daddy coming on? Because they couldn't see because there was all this hair,
That is hilarious.
But as it goes on, the hair gets shorter and I become more visible. And it's like one of those things, that those are when you do a secret code and you put it in the oven and it all comes forward,
Like
Magic
the film.
That stuff. Yeah.
Like the film, the process you have to use for the film.
You're right, yeah, it is a bit like that, yeah.
You were mentioning Royal Albert Hall, and I found it so interesting to watch just the first couple songs, and the way, you and John and Robert kind of, had that stance on stage where you were already very famous, but it seemed there was still an innocence and an earnestness to all of it. I remember Robert saying, well, the next song we're going to do is called Dazed and Confused. And, it's this crazy, mind-blowing avant-garde thing. Yeah. And not quite being conscious of the fact that it was so, mind-blowing.
I think part of it as well is that there's another section that precedes that, which is when we're doing some TV. It's rare that we ever did television, because they didn't want us to play live. But there we're playing live, and this audience is sitting on the floor, and they're looking at us like this, and it looks like they're absolutely terrified by it all. And when we played in the Royal Albert Hall, the audience was very sedate, extremely sedate, and they were clapping at the ends of numbers, and I guess we were playing accordingly. In fact, it's very odd looking at it and seeing, when I first started to analyse what was going on the Royal Albert Hall, and you can see that we're so deep in concentration there that we're almost still like a club band in a way.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and yet when you get to Madison Square Garden, the footage there, we're really exploding out of our skins. We've got all this musical ESP thing going on, but it's just, the confidence is just over-brimming. It's not that we weren't confident at the Albert Hall, but it just showed how we were progressing all the time.
Absolutely.
And plus, the audience at Madison Square Garden.
In America, it was always different, right?
Well, we thought it was wild at the time, but even that looks quite by American standards of today, or even a decade ago. But it's great, though. It's wonderful just to get in there and see what made us tick musically, and it's cool.
Yeah, and as a fan document, it's so great, because, fans have been waiting for this. People like me, I never got to see Led Zeppelin live, obviously, and they were one of the bands that transported me. They were one of the first epic bands for me, and so was it important for you to show the whole range of what the band's history was for this? I've heard you describe it as an epic project, as a full story.
Well, you've hit the nail right on the head, because that's exactly what I felt it needed. There was only basically 4 times that the band was filmed, and only 2 occasions of that when it was really done, like, with a means to an end. In other words, and so it was done on celluloid. And we got this Royal Albert Hall footage back because it was in other hands, and in the end we just did a deal, and look, we'll pay you and so we can get it back. Because the reality of it was we knew that there was so little of us shot, so it was imperative that we got that back. And initially, when we saw, there were 10 reels. One reel had one reel had a show reel, which was 45 minutes long with sound on it. The other 9 reels were all silent. So it was quite interesting to see sort of what we had, and because we all actually went in there to see that, and we identified what the pieces were, and I said I'd go and get the multi-tracks, because the rest of the band were very keen on just that to come out on DVD. So that would have been a concert in 1970. Good time, of course, because the second album had come out. It had been out about four months beforehand. As far as like a milestone in Zeppelin's career, the Royal Albert Hall was massive. It's like an American band playing Madison Square, for example, over here. It just is one of those sort of things, high point. And so, yeah, that's why we actually documented that at the time. But it made sense to put it out. But I thought, well, hang on, you know, the only thing that's out there is Song Remains the Same. That was shot in 1973, came out in 1976.
You know?
And I could just, well, I went down to get these audio tapes out there, all these other boxes going like this.
Oh.
And I could just see a much bigger picture, because it was really, it was what was really necessary to show it can't show everything, but there was an 11-year career with Led Zeppelin, and it'll span from right from the beginning right to the very end, and I really thought that was essential.
Definitely.
And plus with the, you know, with the advent of digital and you know, the home cinema and all the rest of it, just DVD really, just the quality of DVD alone, you know, whether you have it in stereo or in the 5.1, it's just fantastic. It gives you a chance to get right in and see what everyone was doing.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool, and the fact that right after the Royal Albert Hall, we do, you know, find you guys, Madison Square Garden's top shape, you know, Led Zeppelin 4 is a massive success, your House as a Whole is right around the corner, and, you know, if you try to go back to that time, was it the feeling of, oh my God, we've made it? Not just, you know, commercially, but just in terms of sound, in terms of band, you know, telepathy almost. Was it like, okay, this is it, you know?
Because one of the things that happened with the band was every time we came over, for example, here in the States, every time that we toured, there were more people coming to see us than the time before. And so it was just apparent that the band was just continuing. It never plateaued, you know, it never peaked.
No.
And it was and so that was a major part of it. You know, as far as us knowing just exactly what it meant to other people, because of course what it meant to people really had been only transferred by the albums and the live shows, because we weren't doing anything else. I mean, I know we did Song Remains the Same, but that was just for a cinema, because we weren't really the type of bands that go on television, you know.
No,
but you know, there were times, like for example, when we got the first gold disc, that meant so much to me. It was a gold disc. Now I know we sold multi-millions, but it was like, oh, I can't believe this. It was like a dream, you know. And all of those sort of things that came along with the measuring of the success. You know. It's great.
And the fact that this project, you know, took you over a year to realize. I remember reading the liner notes to the remasters box set in the 90s when I got that. And I remember you reading a quote from you saying, I felt like I relived my whole life remastering this. Was it kind of the same this time around, seeing it on top of hearing it, you know, just kind of reliving those moments and going into the studio with the guys and saying, remember this? What do you think this is, you know?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I probably did say that at the time, because before doing the remasters, obviously I got everything out that we'd done in the studio. And I'd never listened to it back to back or day after day like that. But it was imperative to do that at that time, to really put the project into order. But with this, it was different, because not only were you hearing it, but you actually seeing the playing, you know. Yeah. No, I did relive my life. Because, you know, one of the things is that people come up to you and say, you know what, I really lived my life with Led Zeppelin. You know, and I'd say, well, and it's true, absolutely true. It's not just a smart answer. I'd say, well, it might come as a surprise to you, but I actually lived my life with Led Zeppelin too. Yeah. Because it was, you know, it was just a major part of my life and growth and development, you know.
Were there any memories or periods that, you know, came back very strongly that you didn't think, you know, did you see a certain image that tapped into a part that you didn't think was so strong or would affect you that much, or was there a part or a period that was more, you know, emotionally either surprising or?
Well, I know I think I know what you mean with that. But by the fact that, you know, if we'd have had more visual, maybe it might have been more apparent on another level. But because we only had footage from 1970, 1973, 1975, and 1979.
There's gaps.
There were such large gaps, and believe me, in those days, the Led Zeppelin was moving at such a rate, especially in the early years. Yeah. For example, when they did the Royal Albert Hall, and they showed us this show reel I was talking about earlier, and it must have been 6 months after the actual point that it was recorded. Straight away, you could see that they hadn't covered all the angles, but the most important thing was that we've moved on so far. Even the way we were playing the numbers were quite different. Yeah. But I guess all in all, the thing that became most apparent to me was the thing that I already knew, with the fact that every night that we went on, it was totally different. You know, and actually checking the tapes out from the different nights. You know, there was, for example, 3 nights at Earl's Court, and we were playing differently on it. They were totally different approaches. You know, I mean, some people might have thought it was a different band every night. It was fantastic, but that's how it was, and that was the magic of the band, really.
I guess that's what gave you the diversity as well, to choose what take you wanted for the CD. As well, you know, make it the ultimate concert, you know, the ultimate experience, or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. It was definitely taken really on well, where there was a choice, there was no choice, of course, of Royal Albert Hall. It was what it was. But where there was a choice, I intended to take the best version. But how about this? And when I got to the tapes of the Royal Albert Hall, it appeared as when I got to the tapes of the audio tapes of... No, hold on, I'll start again, because I'm really mucked it up. When I got to the tapes of Earl's Court, and it appeared as though there were 3 nights recorded, and there seemed to be some boxes missing on the first night, because you had to understand that these particular live tapes had never been played from the day they were recorded. And then it became apparent that the first night, it had so much trouble in the recording truck that they just had to shut it down. The recording was absolutely, you know, it was just awful. They had real problems, and you can even try to patch things in, and there's these noises. So that's the first night gone. The second night, John Bonham's bass drum was missing for the first 4 numbers, and then they got it going. So if you see what I mean, if you're going to have the first couple of numbers from Earl's Court, you know, you'd really have to be just very, very lucky and fortunate that first number was a fantastic success on everybody's behalf. All the band were firing on all 4 cylinders, but it was interesting, and it wasn't fraught with danger, this whole project, but it was great. And as you say, you know, about a year. Well, I know that I was in the studio for about 6 months solid, doing this day after day after day, going from audio studios to video editing suite 1, 2, 3, and even 4 on some occasions in one day.
In one day.
It was fun, but I know, but so. But you know, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, that right from the beginning of it, I found it really hypnotising watching it, and even at the end, it was exactly the same. So if it was like that for me, I just knew that real fans of Zeppelin were just going to have a whale of a time with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you bring any, like, did you go into the studio one day and say to your kids or whatnot, come watch this, come see this, or, you know, to the other guys in the band, oh my God, guess what I found?
Well, I kept the rest of...
Or are you more, you know, secluded? In the studio.
Or secretive, even.
Secretive.
Do you know, I've always been the sort of person who would rather actually get something completely sort of finished, and well, actually nothing is ever totally finished, but at a really good point, do you know what I mean? And rather than shows like work in progress where, you know, say the sound would be okay, but the video editing, they'd only got, say, halfway through it with all the angles and the sync and all the rest of it. So what actually happened was, as far as the group went, there was sort of, at the end of, say, the Royal Albert Hall, when that was getting to a finished sort of state, then they had references to see how things were going. In case there were any points where they went, oh, actually, I really hate that angle, or whatever. To be honest with you, we used every bit of footage of the Royal Albert Hall, so there wasn't anything you could change, because it just, certain bits weren't covered. But that was the way that it was done, so that otherwise somebody would get a false impression of how it was supposed to actually, you know, come out at the end of the day. So, but no, they were kept informed of everything as it went along.
Were you that kind of producer as well in Led Zeppelin's career? How were you as a producer? Because we know Jimmy Page is a guitarist on stage, Jimmy Page, you know, as a studio musician, but as a producer, we don't have that much insight on what your role was, you know? How were you in regards to the production aspect?
Okay, well, you see, first of all, I'd had basically an apprenticeship being a studio musician before joining the Yardbirds, and I had actually produced I'd produce certain bands and certain artists with Immediate, which is a label that Andrew Oldham, who managed the Stones, had. So, I wasn't really too unfamiliar with certain recording techniques, and plus I come up with a lot of ideas of my own that could be incorporated. As far as it went with the band, if we'd have the track sort of written, the song written. So, for example, if it was my song and I brought it in, it would be easy just to map out the arrangement. Robert would come up with the lyrics. We'd do the tracks, and then the rest would go home, and I'd do all the guitar overlaying. Robert would come back in and do his vocals. Mm-hmm. And then I'd just put the final, like the filigree bits and the solo. And then they'd build up track after track after track. And then I'd just go in and I'd mix it all and then play it to the band at the end.
Really?
So that's sort of how it was done. And then, of course, if it was somebody else's song, like on the last album, In Through the Outdoor, there were songs which were, say, maybe Robert and John. By then they'd written a couple of numbers. And then I'd produce in another way, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Did you at some point, because Led Zeppelin was so media shy, did you at some point during this project regret that and say, man, I wish we had done, more of those Danish TV shows so we could have more footage, or I wish we would have asked the BBC to record a couple more concerts, or...
Well, actually, you see, at the time, I was very keen for us not to appear on television in a way, because the way that, well, for a start, I mean, the obvious thing would have been putting out singles and miming. We weren't going to do that, so there wasn't really a vehicle for us, Mm-hmm. We weren't going to have like a weekly show where we play live, we just didn't fit into that sort of category at all. And so I really, media shy to a point. When an album came out, I'd do just a minimum of interviews, really, just to really get the word out that an album was out, and then a single would go to radio, but not to the market. And that's how it would go on. So I didn't really have any necessity, I didn't feel, to be doing any TV interviews whatsoever. Times change, haven't they? But let me say that when this whole project was being put together, there was some people were suggesting that we actually put on it, us talking about Led Zeppelin in this day and age. I went, not a bit of it, can't have it.
Like I'm behind the music.
Yeah, sort of. But let's go back and we'll see what we've got of us talking when we were actually living the music, all right? Well, it was great because there was this wonderful bit of John Bonham talking in Australia that was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And he really, that would have done it just to have that, because it summed it all up. And there was lots of Robert talking, and there was a bit of John Paul Jones, and actually there wasn't anything of me whatsoever. So, in actual fact, it would have been fine not to have done any talking forever, except with a project like this. I thought I was sort of missed out, apart from one point where we'd arrived at an airport and NBC or one of these channels was there, and they'd taste, and I got caught by default and talking about the Beatles or something. But I mean, I looked really uncomfortable.
Well, it's a ridiculous question. They ask you, like, what's the difference between you guys and the Beatles, which is, absurd.
Well, the reason why was because we'd knocked the Beatles off we were at number one.
Yeah.
With the second album or whatever it was at that point, and really that was quite something for a band to have actually dethroned the Beatles, you see.
Yeah.
But I didn't care, In that respect, it wasn't as though I was in a competition with the Beatles. I was just really happy that people were appreciating what we were doing.
Definitely. I was, as you read about people that were close to the band during maybe 73, 74, photographers like Neil Preston, or journalists like Cameron Crowe, describe the experience of being on tour with Led Zeppelin as almost being part of a secret club. A club that only a select group of people are allowed in. Your inner circle was very, tight, even though, in the lobbies of the hotels there were probably tons of people miling around trying to get a glimpse of you guys. What was it about that period that was so, I guess, special, that had to be maintained, secretly? Was it just your privacy that was important at that point?
Yeah, that was essential, really. But of course it was. And it's interesting that he's made that analogy between like a sort of secret society or closed shop, and maybe we were very protective, and and we weren't letting everybody in, and you know, it was only sort of trusted friends that were within that circle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you feel that the fact that right after the band ended, probably now in the last 10 years, the music has come back into prominence, but in between maybe 80 and 90, before you put out the remasters, what remained as an image of the band was very sensationalistic and not about the music. Did you feel that clouded over, and was that why it was important to put stuff out again?
No, that wasn't. The thing is that during the 80s, there were many bands that actually you could tell had taken a lot from actually Led Zeppelin in many ways, whatever they thought, whether it was the music or the lifestyle or what. But there was definitely a point of reference in quite a number of those bands to what we were doing musically. As far as I didn't feel that we had to put anything out on purpose relative to that. I mean, the 4 CD box set came out because the CDs of the albums had come out, but they weren't really very good. They weren't done very well. I really wanted to go back and do them again and improve the quality
sound,
of them. Yeah. Sorry, what was the other part of your question you were asking? Because I was going to start and come back in on it.
Well, I just felt
it was something to do with the lifestyle, wasn't it? Okay, can I come back in on this?
You can absolutely come back on this. It's like the bands of the 80s used the mythology of Led Zeppelin as a blueprint for their lifestyle.
Yeah. Yes, well, they did. But I want to give you... I want to put this into some sort of perspective. We've done this CDs of the West Coast material. It's a 3.5-hour show. And if you can imagine that, I said before, and it's absolutely true, that every Led Zeppelin show and every concert was absolutely different. That when you walked on stage, you never knew what was going to happen between that point and when you walked off. There was just so much that was in a state of change, and directions of music were going, and new riffs, and new this, and new that. And the thing is, what it means is that when you went up on stage, you had to be right on the edge of it. There's no way you could be going up there and thinking about something else or some problem that had happened in the day. It was just a total escapism from the real world into this whole world, this joint, 4 elements, taking on this alchemical aspect of a 5th element. And 3.5 hours of that intensity, when you came on stage, you couldn't go home and have a cup of cocoa and go to bed.
No.
Okay, so this aspect of it went from, from that we go to clubs, which would be for most people like real high energy, but for us that was coming down. You see what I mean? So it just went on and on and on tours, so.
Yeah, I think.
So that's it. It was a question of, necessity, I suppose.
Necessity and balance, right?
Absolutely.
I find the fact that you're still so ultimately passionate and loving when you speak of those times on stage, a true test to the music. And the fact that even you've grown as a musician, you've all grown as musicians, but you still see it's like a snapshot, and it's captured in time. Do you still adopt that same philosophy on stage of like, this is it, play or bust?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I always have. I have. And
even before Led Zeppelin?
Yeah, I think I have. That's always been part of me, yeah. But then again, maybe I picked up the guitar in the first place to escape. It was the perfect vehicle for escaping from the real world, especially learning it and just playing it. And yeah, that's right, just becoming, to a point where it's almost another limb or something, another extension of your personality, or like another orifice talking for you,
Yeah, did you feel sometimes at some points that you expressed yourself better through the guitar than in any other way humanly possible?
No, I think there's no doubt about it, because it's just the pure thing of knowing the sort of joy that you've brought to people through the guitar playing. So
you can do
on
no
a mass
wrong.
scale, which I don't think I've done that in my private life on a mass scale, so we'll stick to the guitar as being the main instrument of my communication.
All right. And do you remember, you're saying that the first times I picked up a guitar, do you remember what you were playing those times? Do you remember what you were trying to learn? Was it Muddy Waters, blues songs? Was it...
It hadn't quite got onto that, because when I first started playing it, it was sort of like, it was the early rock stuff, you know, and from that, finding that was like even the early Elvis stuff, finding that was 12-bar blues, and then getting onto the source material that he'd been using, that it sort of came through like that. But yeah, it was really, you know, access rock, and then because rock had really come from cross between blues. Well, that Presley thing, really, that was a fusion of it between the black and white music, and that's where it really all came from, you know, for all of us, really.
Did you ever meet Elvis?
Yeah, it was wonderful.
What did he say or what did you say the first time you met him?
Well, he came through we were waiting in a suite after one of his concerts, and everyone was pretty nervous because we were going to meet Elvis, and he came through the door, and there he was standing there, and he had these twitches, like, I guess it might have been a bit of a nervous thing, but he just really, it was just Elvis immediately without any doubt, and he came over, and we were introduced to him, and he was introduced to us. Everyone was a bit shy. And then John Bonham, bless his heart, said, "What was that hot rod you were driving in Loving You?" He couldn't wait to ask him. And Elvis went, "It was a so-and-so, so-and-so," and the ice was broken, and we were having a great time. He was shy, you know. I mean, he was just, you could tell we were shy. He was a shy man, but the minute, you know, that was out the way, he was wonderful. Such a warm man, he's fantastic.
And you've obviously probably had experiences where musicians come up and meet you and have the same kind of, you know, first ice-breaking experience.
Yeah.
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 And how is that for you? Do you actually, are you conscious of them when they occur?
Yeah, but I don't drive a hot rod.
No. True. True.
Yeah.
You do play a mean Gibson, though.
All right.
Okay, so the CD is out, the DVD is out, or they're coming out eminently. And is there any material left to kind of mine after that, or is this the definitive last Led Zeppelin?
It's really good that you've asked that, because people are already thinking, oh, this is the beginning, this is a whole nest of stuff that they've found, a whole cachet, and it's all coming out. To be honest with you, this is exactly what there is. Even the live material, this West Coast material, has come out as a result, really, of the DVD. At the time when I found the video boxes because there's the audio and the video aspect of it, when they were checking out that to see what condition it was in, I really didn't know how this was all going to shape up. You know, I had an idea I'd like to see it go, but to make sure, I loaded in all the live tapes that we had, all the audio tapes. Yeah. And so when it finally came to the point that we did use Earl's Court and Nebworth, and the DVD shaped up that way, the record company were keen to put out a soundtrack at the DVD, and I went, not a moment of it. We'll put out the West Coast stuff, because that's going to give, you know, yet another facet of the live performances of Led Zeppelin. And, you know, and it's a good one that can hold up without the visuals too, you know.
Absolutely.
But that's it. That really is all, that's all that we've got, believe it or not. Isn't it amazing? But that's it.
And does that give you a certain sense of closure? Does that kind of freak you out?
Well, no, it doesn't freak me out, but that's what it is. And because it's, you know, because now I've realised by doing this whole project that is the sort of final part of that chapter. And as you say, like closing the book on it, I'm really pleased that, pleased that I've really taken on the mantle of doing this, and be really pleased that it's been done really, really well, and that it's also coming out.
Yeah. And so how are you going to occupy your days now?
Oh, I've got some other ideas that'll keep me busy for a while.
Really? Are you going to share them with us?
I can't tell you. No, if I tell you what they are, if I don't do it, it'll be, people say we didn't manage to pull that off, or B, someone might nick my idea.
All right.
Nick means steal in English.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jimmy Page.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for many years. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, guys.